please.
It's ready.
Okay. Okay, so, right, since I have a PowerPoint presentation up, but since we're a little pressed for time, I won't waste any time just setting that up, and I'll just use these questions that Porter handed me as a framework for just giving you an update on the REAM initiative. First question, what framework of information has been established for the downtown Louisiana business area? So far we've done a lot of study, a lot of analysis. We've completed several reports, just including, I'll get my list so I make sure I get everything. The land use, building, and infrastructure survey, which is basically conducting an inventory of all the land use, building conditions, street conditions, etc. in the DREAM study area, which is essentially downtown Louisiana. So that information has been provided to the city in a report format. The data is available for you as well. We've also completed the community and consumer survey, which consisted of focus groups, telephone surveys of residents and business people in Louisiana. We completed the residential demand analysis, which the Missouri Housing Development Corporation, their commission, completed for the city of Louisiana, which gives a breakdown of the residential demand picture in the city of Louisiana and makes recommendations for future housing development, particularly with respect to downtown. The financial assistance review has been completed. That takes a look at all the various statutory financing mechanisms that the city of Louisiana could use to achieve any of the goals developed through the commission, whether they be special taxing district incentives like tax credit financing or community improvement district or transportation development district, or whether there would be other kinds of incentives like neighborhood assistance program tax credits, NDAB credits, new market tax credits, so forth. There's an entire glossary appended to that document that describes all of these incentive mechanisms. The streetscape and building design guidelines have been provided. That includes recommendations for using design guidelines to encourage the maintenance of the historic architectural language in Louisiana that is such that the heritage here. The downtown site plans document, part of the building and streetscape and building design guidelines. During that whole conversation, my predecessor was directed to take a look at some specific sites in downtown and develop concepts for those sites. The old Rexall building site, the green space adjacent to the City Hall building here, and the riverfront. Those are these two boards here that Bart read back for us. Just some concepts for some enhancements. Here you can see for the riverfront plan, we have a couple different, phased improvements. To enhance the.
Since this is a little informal, let me jump in. There are similar renderings with options for the other sites
Yes.
That were brought up.
Yes. And you now have those in report format. And I have those electronically as well if anyone would like to have copies.
How do you get copies? Okay.
What's that?
Do you email you maybe?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you can have those.
So if you send them to me, I can put them on the city website.
Okay, great. So what we have left to do, the organizational structure review, which I believe is a draft form, needs to be finalized. The retail market analysis, some preliminary findings with respect to that report were reported in 2009. Those need to be updated and the report submitted to the city. What that document will do is it will inventory retail uses and services, the current demand for retail sales and services in the city, and compare that with the existing services to make recommendations, guided recommendations about future retail attraction and development that the city could undertake. It will provide a lot of demographic information and retail demand information and retail development strategies. So to give you guys some directed advice, saying like whether or not a new grocery store would make sense in Louisiana or a new shoe store, what have you. Let's see. Another question, what local capacity has been built for sustaining a long-term revitalization program preserving the character and sense of place for the downtown Louisiana business area? I think that's been a topic of discussion over the past year or so. Talking about setting up a community improvement district, that would be one mechanism and entity that could help preserve the character and sense of place for downtown Louisiana and sustain this long-term revitalization. What a community improvement district would do, first it would be governed by a board of directors, membership of which could be determined by the executive officer of the municipality, the mayor, or it could be elected at large by the residents of the community improvement district. Levy or impose an additional sales tax or property tax to fund various revitalization projects within its boundaries. I think we were focusing on streetscape improvements, capital improvements, we talked about last year. This is one thing we've been talking about. If there are any other organizations that's that the city would like to establish or have to help sustain downtown's revitalization, but just think about that.
The CID group did significant work, including down to cost estimations were focused on street lighting and sidewalks. And then also we were trying to determine whether or not this could be included as well. So there's a full breakout of costs involved in this particular project that may prove useful.
Before you get on that CID further along, then I got to tell you straight up that what I've read about it, I'm against. Louisiana is not big enough to have two governments.
Well, it wouldn't be two governments.
Huh?
It wouldn't be two governments.
CID. Once the city council adopts CID, according to everything I've read, it becomes separate legal entity from the city.
Yeah, but it wouldn't operate entirely independent of the city. The city would still have some oversight and would have the opportunity.
There is no specific area in town that can sustain itself. It's not self-supporting without the entire community. Louisiana is not that big.
Right.
It doesn't take away everything that
Right.
the city is already, it's just allowing a small incremental difference specific to that area.
Well, everything else, still with CID and NIB both, is dependent upon taxes. You might get 23 years to pay it back, but the fastest way to run a customer off is to raise taxes. He's got to pay a sales tax, or property owners are barely hanging on downtown now.
Porter, I'd
You
love
raise that property tax, a lot of them gonna pay it.
I'd love to engage in that. It's not a property tax, it's a sales tax, and there's actual statistical
Sales
data.
tax will not.
There's actual statistical data that Green has provided that indicates that this level is
Is that-
not only
Is
sustainable.
that data
but desirable.
gathered up from Louisiana?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay,
so.
I wanna see that.
I mean, just talking about sales tax, it's in the CID plan. I sent you a copy of this last week.
I just got that this morning.
Okay, well. So there's a table in here that shows how Louisiana's sales tax compares with nearby municipalities. So the sales tax in Clarksville is 7.225. Louisiana is 7.725. And then Pittsfield is higher, it's 7.775. Bowling Green, 7.9. Hannibal, 8.6. And there's a TDD, a Transportation Development District in Hannibal, that covers a shopping center, and the sales tax there is 9.2. So what I'm saying is like Louisiana's sales tax rate is pretty competitive. It's pretty low compared to the municipalities. I think if you raised,
Our low sales tax is an invitation for folks to come see us.
sure,
And broken streets and services is a disincentive.
I don't want to argue any points. I want to know about the financing and what's
Sure.
available to us.
well, it's
The plans and all that stuff.
In every
You
community,
got better,
CID
smarter
is,
people than me.
has
on
been
that.
a new topic of conversation in most of the communities that we're working with through the Dream Initiative, because we're working in rural Missouri, and most rural communities have not dealt with a district of that sort before. So education is key, and then we have, we've worked with several to educate, to help everybody with a better understanding of what types of services it can provide, and how it works in connection with the city and what the benefit is. So it's just something that we're gonna have to get you more information on, and it's an education tool so that collectively, everybody can make an educated decision about whether or not it works for Louisiana.
whether or not you get the anticipated return on the tax dollar investment. Just to clarify though, a community improvement district is not wholly separate from the city. It's its own political entity. but it operates sort of overlaying the city. So the same city services will apply within the community improvement district. All the community improvement district really does is it funds its own revitalization via its own tax imposition. A tax imposition that would have to be approved by the qualified voters within that district. So there's 2 or 3 opportunities with which people get asked the question. Firstly, they get asked the question at council. Do you want the CID? If the council approves it, then the CID can go into place. Secondly, once the CID is in place, the people who live within the CID get asked the question, do you want a sales tax or property tax? And then people get a chance to vote and say whether or not they actually want that sales tax. I think the telephone surveys have indicated a favorable view of additional taxes or tax-forgiven financing if those funds would get used for capital improvements in downtown Louisiana.
And the most attractive thing to me about the CID is that because it's a separate entity, it is absolutely required to use those funds only for those things. So you know that that tax is going towards those infrastructure pieces.
Because we weren't just talking about downtown, we were talking about taking it clear out to the west end.
How you did your telephone survey. But I can almost guarantee you, the folks in Louisiana, Missouri is not going to approve another sales tax increase.
It would not be a citywide.
It would not be
Yeah.
citywide.
Huh?
It would
It's
not
not
be
a
citywide.
citywide.
citywide vote.
It's not a citywide vote.
I know, but I looked at the map of your proposed CID, and it's, you got too many residential folks there that's not interested in assisting downtown property owners or business owners elsewhere.
I think you'd be surprised.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe
You'd be
education would help.
surprised.
The statistics don't bear that out for you.
That's right.
I have seen too many sales tax issues fail because,
No, I understand.
number one, they weren't sold right.
Well, I understand it's a difficult.
Does this tax area have a sunset?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
I think we contemplated a 5-year.
yes.
yeah, we were going for the
5%,
shortest
yeah.
term, most focused infrastructure description that we could come up with specifically for that, to just really target in on some key critical issues
And that's all
that
described.
would be desirable.
The sunset is all described in the. Let's see. So I think I hope I've answered the next question. What has PGAV been doing for Louisiana? I hope I've answered that pretty well. I think we've been pretty busy. Let's see. The next question: will the city have to directly deal with the following, or with PGAV do the grunt work? Is there a development finance board? Well, we'll certainly liaise with Kim and have any kinds of conversations and what. Really, when it comes to that, if you have a project that you think you need some assistance through NDFB, that's who we need to talk to Kim.
Part of the goal of the DREAM initiative itself was to build relationships from city to state. We, anybody involved at the city level, the organizational level, hopefully when we're done here, you'll have a point of contact at the state, whether that be myself or somebody from the Department of Economic Development that you can call with any kind of a project and say, hey, we have this going on in our city, are there any funds or assistance available to us for that? In rural Missouri, we have a harder time sometimes with the outreach, just because there's only so many of us at the state level, so this was an effort to increase communication between some of the smaller communities and the state level. So I encourage you to call me directly if you have any project needs or financing needs, not just in the downtown, but citywide. Sure.
Is there a specific contact person that is kind of the hub person? No, I mean within the city and
Within
at the
Louisiana?
city. Yeah,
Well, originally, this was under the purview of the Mayor's Office of Economic Development, and though I've seen no activity with Mayor's Office of Economic Development, my understanding now today is that Tom turned that over to Bob. So from the standpoint of the city administration, it would be Bob. There is a committee that had been working on this that was when the Mayor's Office of Economic Development powered down, if not shut down. Then LEDC picked that up. The current chair of LEDC is John Lynn, though he's not on the particular board that this was, the CID board, which was the last part that we were actively working on.
Let me, while you're talking about the mayor's economical office, Elizabeth left, nobody fired her, we didn't disband. in fact, when she gave her resignation, Bob was given the job of filling in for economics. And our future plans is to hire an economic director.
Well, with all due
And
respect,
join-
I describe that very differently, Tom, and you've had 2 years to hire that person, and it hasn't happened. Bob has been.
We're not here to argue about that, I wanna hear about Bill.
Bob has been invited to and participated in that
Hadn't been
committee.
BUILD.
BUILD bill.
Yeah.
It's an industrial infrastructure program that's available through
Bob, you get the
my
notes?
office. It's based on job creation. It takes a minimum of 100 jobs and 15 million in investment. It's a program that we administer, but it is initially offered through the Department of Economic Development. So if you're working on an
Tom, I'll see you
industrial
after.
infrastructure type project, you have an industry that's coming in, when you're vetting out incentives with the Department of Economic Development, it may be a tool that they throw into that incentive package. I don't have the ability, my office doesn't have the ability to offer it without it first going through the
Right,
Department of
it's
Economic
come
Development.
from, now which one it did come from, but, the, $15 million minimum investment is
That's a statutory requirement for
Now,
that
it does
particular
not-
program.
necessarily have to be all 15 million right here in Louisiana, right? It can be spread out other places in the state of Missouri. If it's a out-of-state,
It's typically at that project location. Now,
Oh,
I
that's
don't
different.
have the discretion to approve it throughout the state, but
so, $15 million, that's quite, I don't think we're gonna find anybody that's gonna invest $15 million right here. But if you can invest part of it here and part of it someplace else, you know what I'm talking about?
it would need to be tied to the location that was gonna take credit for the jobs being created.
So it'd have to be the overall, where you guys
That
look at
project
it.
itself is, the specifics of it, whenever DED is putting together an incentive package, they will evaluate the money being spent in the state of Missouri as to whether or not those dollars qualify for an incentive. So for me to say absolutely yes or no to that question is kind of impossible because I'm not the one that does that initial evaluation to offer the incentive.
Mhm.
That is all done at the department. And, with that, there's several programs that they might include, and they do a evaluation through merit, an economic impact statement to see the dollars being invested in Missouri, the jobs being created in Missouri, what kinds of
Yeah.
incentives we can put forth and still, have a positive investment. So that may be build, it may be quality jobs, it may be other forms of tax credits or grants. And there's usually always some sort of a local incentive that is required as a part of the package
Yeah.
as well, whether that be tax abatements or
Also,
grants or
gotta understand
infrastructure
the
funding.
difference between the number you gotta hire for office type work and the number you gotta have for getting out and using the shovel.
We do look at the salary for those
Yeah.
positions, and it needs to be above the county average.
So that's what it is, that's, you equalizing it on the salary that's paid, not actually the person.
Office, industries, and industrial type jobs qualify for different levels of incentive. So if it's strictly a call center, that will qualify for different types of incentives than a factory of some sort. Based on the types of jobs that they're providing. So yes, there is some difference then.
Well, the reason I'm interested in this, we're gonna be dealing with millionaires, but millionaires are cheap. So the more we can say you can save a buck here and a buck there, the more they're likely to look at us. We've got a railroad, we've got a river, we've got a, soon to probably make 4-lane highway eventually. And
And
we
the
need to
Department
start
of
taking
Economic
advantage
Development
of those.
has project managers that are assigned all throughout the state to help with the recruitment of industry and site selection for industries. So there is and they just restructured the department, so I need to throw out a name because I may give you the wrong name because there have been some changes. But there is a person there that is dedicated to your area. And when a company is looking for some, you may know who your new person is or if it's still the same person. But they would be the ones that then would coordinate any offer of incentive from the state to an industry. that is
Primarily
not-
dealt with Denise.
She's for block grants specifically, so she doesn't necessarily do all of the tax credits and stuff. Mark, did you have a Mark Kiesling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
But Mark is no longer
right. So I don't know who has taken
his
that
spot.
position. I'm trying to think of who has, part of the state now because Mark just left a couple weeks ago. But I can certainly get that information information and send
Yeah,
it to you.
if you would, because I've got the possibility of a different food store wanting
Okay.
to go into Alps and not necessarily Kroger.
Okay, so yeah, I'll get you your new project manager person to deal with, for the offer of incentives when possible. And then, whenever you guys have sites, if you have an industrial infrastructure site that is available, you make sure that they know about it, so if they have a company that's looking for some place and if they look at the specs, if it fits what you have, they may be able to kind of send them your direction, so.
Well, Bill takes care of the big investments. Now, how about the small ones? We've got a brand new grocery store here in town, and those folks I know could use some financial assistance along the way, to help build up their downtown store. And I hope they make $10 million sitting there in the next 2 years.
I do too.
Well, they won't, but I hope they. But, they were brave enough to take, we needed a store, they did. And how can we, and they're in this downtown green area, so how can we help them?
With state funds, typically we are generally limited to infrastructure related improvements. It's
They
very
need a lot
hard,
of,
it's very hard for us to just give money to a private for-profit business. It's
No, it's not.
statutorily difficult.
the inside of the building.
It's not the
It
inside of
could
the building.
use a lot of sprucing up, because it's been everything from a garage to,
Retail and for-profit is difficult for us, but publicly owned infrastructure that benefits the businesses is something that we can often take a look
but
at
can you
because
all
it's,
guide us kinda,
sure, we can guide you
That's-
whenever you have
that's-
projects like that, that's what we need to
and-
know about.
we don't have to talk about that here, you can just let me know and I'll get the
Yeah, we have
information
conversations
there.
about that, and I'm sure there's,
Or the bar.
yeah, some tax incentives you can use locally, tax payment or, some
I
other
think-
such thing.
To answer that question from my participation, the CID was a part of that. What can we do? We can't go hand them a stack of cash to put in new shelves. But what we can do is provide an incentive that makes business more attractive in this area so that our whole economy downtown and actually extending all the way out Georgia would be revitalized, so there is more money to buy new shelves. We kind of have to
Yeah,
deal with the edges to get to that center.
I know a perfect place to get them close by Huck's up in Quincy. I used to haul that stuff all over the country. And I don't know how, but it's wholesale. So I don't know how difficult it would be, but I don't know there's groceries weigh a little bit more than a book. So you're gonna need a sturdier shelf and stuff like that. But they're gonna get by and they're gonna make it. But I'd like to be able to help.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there may be some local incentives, in addition to doing a CID or, the city could offer them tax abatement to give them some relief and then give them some funds that they can use for their interior improvements.
Well, the problem is they don't own that building, so
Yeah.
it's not
No,
them.
that's what was my question, I was thinking that they were.
Yeah, they do not own that building, so we can't actually give them.
Okay, is a private person on that building?
No,
Yes.
that's John sitting on the building, but
Okay,
the thing is, I don't wanna have to wait on the city council to do something that they might change their mind on.
Okay.
So, you got the dream already, you got you already. So what can you do for us?
for
The
the
downtown
grocery store or just for
people
downtown in general?
Needing help right now.
Well, what kind of help?
I think the idea is that we have to help ourselves.
Yeah,
They've given us a whole lot of information that we have to use to help ourselves.
That's just it. We can't help ourselves without money.
Okay.
That's where I am. I'm not in the planning, I'm not in the dreaming side of it. I wanna finance it. How can we finance it?
well, part of the idea of the Dream Initiative is to help you get some projects together that you can come to the city and ask for some assistance, like like we just talked about, or other tax credits, those kinds of things. To educate you on various other statutory mechanisms like a CID or like tax refinance or some other such things that you can use that vehicle to fund other public improvements or private improvements in the case of a grocery store that needs some interior renovation or any other business that might need facade improvements or some other such thing. So I think that we have some pretty good plans so far, but when it comes to setting up a vehicle to fund some of these improvements to some of these other capital improvement needs, it's really gonna be a decision that the city council's gonna have to make about what the scope of that incentive or vehicle is going to be and what those monies are gonna get used for. I wish I had a sack of money I could just drop off.
Yeah,
If the,
Not how it
that'd be
works.
great.
if
We'd
the,
take
Porter, if the concept is, and I've heard this so many times, the Dream Initiative isn't providing us any financing, any money.
It's not
Whether-
supposed to.
Okay, it's not supposed to,
Right, it's not
exactly.
supposed to, yeah.
What they have done though, is if you read, for instance, the first two reports that Andy mentioned, you can line this thing up, that we have these vacant buildings, we know where they are, what their condition is. We statistically know because of PGAV, what kinds of businesses a community like Louisiana can support and which ones we have. And we can go, hey, we could support a cobbler, and here's 3 buildings that would support a cobbler. And an economic development arm in the city can go find us a cobbler. More than that, as we learn about our community and what we are, we can prepare projects like this downtown that will target certain kinds of critical mass industries. So for instance, stopover tourism. This would be huge for stopover tourism. So if we can fund that, ASL Pier, all the artists in town, everybody that serves lunches and dinners from Fat Boys to Eagles Nest, all the way out to the West End, all of those people see money that they can use to buy new shelves that will hold groceries. So we have to do it. If we're using state money, we have to come at it from the infrastructure and larger picture, and that has to produce the income to make those kinds of specific private investments.
More like a trickle down sort of effect,
Yeah.
or trickle in.
Yeah, exactly.
One more concern, because of what he said. We do have a town full of artists that came here because we invited them here. And then we got them here and turned them, say, okay, you're on your own. And I don't think that's right. If you invite somebody here and they're coming here on a promise and you ain't fulfilling the promise, you're not even talking to them.
That was a project that was started by PCDA, and probably going back to PCDA would be the way to start marketing those artists
So,
the way they were supposed to.
On that end, we are probably supposed to go back, right? And then we're gonna hire our own economic director too, to work hand in hand with Carol. And you.
Okay.
Now that we know who you are, we don't wanna let you guys go.
Carolyn, that's, okay, yeah,
And we work with Robin Fitzgerald.
right, yeah.
That's okay, I missed you.
You sure? I want to keep you from something like that.
No,
It sounds
that's it.
important. Okay.
I just don't wanna miss mom.
We'll make sure you're there.
Give me a stop and get me a drink first.
You got it.
Y'all are so wrong.
What do you actually want from us? This
Well-
whole city of Louisiana. What can we do to help you help us?
Well, what I need you to do is, I guess keep asking these kinds of good questions and keep on me about getting the rest of these reports done, and keep a good group together to keep a good constructive conversation going on about establishing the vision, putting it all together, especially as we get together for the strategic plan and wrap all of our prior work into this document that's really going to guide the implementation of all these projects. It's going to include discussions about everything we've talked about today, various site plans, streetscape design guidelines, and various financial mechanisms.
What would be one of the first things that the city would need, as far as would it be best to have an economic development person, or you know what I mean, first, or does Bob need to do certain things, or in order to get
Well, I don't
can't
know.
get out what I'm trying to say.
Those are decisions that are forthcoming with whatever changes
I
might
just
take
mean
place in
kinda
the
like,
council. So
what
I
would-
think that's the first direction, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the next step would be based upon who's on the council, is to make a decision if they were gonna go ahead with the CID.
Sure.
'Cause
That is one step, but I would not say, if the CID doesn't go, that doesn't mean the dream is over.
Right.
well, and then my other question was, what other alternatives are there besides the CID?
Okay. All depends on what the city wants to do. The CID is a really nice vehicle to create funds for capital improvements and for other improvements. You can use it for marketing for downtown. You can use it to hire a staff person who would work, be a liaison with downtown businesses between the city and downtown folks. You can use CID money for a lot of different purposes. It's nice and flexible. Other options would be a transportation development district. Those funds are a little more limited to only transportation-related improvements, streets and parking. Tax-driven financing district is another option that allows the capture of future property taxes and sales taxes for use within the district. And you can use those monies for a lot of different things too: capital improvements, public improvements, or private building improvements like interior improvements or facade improvements. So there's a lot of different options. I think it depends on the scope of the improvements and the city wants to undertake and what all they want to do. If there's anything else they want to do, like have a person to staff a downtown organization or do fund marketing for downtown Louisiana or anything else. So those are things we can certainly talk about going forward.
Sorry, this goes back to the beginning. So the DREAM initiative is basically you guys are kind of a vehicle to get things to work and the different programs to work. You guys aren't an actual, DREAM isn't like a specific thing. It's a
planning
vehicle
initiative.
to get
We are-
things going for the city and to tell
Yes.
and show everybody what you can do and can't do and move things forward.
Planning is a very expensive activity, and
Uh-huh.
the state saw a need for it in rural Missouri, specifically dedicated to downtown revitalization. We have so many dying downtowns throughout the state that represent, the history of these communities. They're the heart of communities. And there's a nationwide push to revitalize the core of communities. So this was a opportunity to get you and other communities like you access to professional plans to push you beyond what you might be able to think of or do on your own. They have studied this and have done it all over the nation, and even they work in other countries. They do amazing things. Most small Missouri communities would not be able to afford somebody of this caliber, of PGAV's caliber for these things. So, for a small portion of the cost, you have a wealth of resources available for planning. Now it is up to the city and the people within the city to take those plans and make them happen. The state can't come in and do a development for you and make it successful. The city has to be behind it, and it's gotta be community driven and supported in order to be successful.
Okay,
If it is not community driven and supported, it is a $45,000 doorstop in City Hall. It's a bunch of paperwork.
Right.
So it is up to us to
Take
do
it
the
well
work.
with it.
Yeah.
Now I'm just trying to get this all straight
No,
because
that's
I know nothing about this yet. So you're with the state of Missouri,
Yes.
and then you're with the PGAV, and what is the PGAV exactly?
PGAV stands for Heckengeiten Albers and Beats.
Oh.
Now you
That's
know
what
what
sounds
it
like
is.
her.
Okay.
That's what PGAV is.
Okay. So you guys are a professional consulting firm that's coming to the city, or the state has hired you
Right.
to come in and do these things to help out.
I'm
Okay.
going to tell you just a little bit about the firm. We have offices in St. Louis and Kansas City. There's 3 portions to our firm. There's a planners group, which I'm a part. We do urban planning and economic development consulting all over Missouri, Illinois, Ohio, state of Louisiana, state of Tennessee. We've even been to New Zealand and Australia. Other parts of our firm is the destinations group. They plan and design major destinations like theme parks, museums, Georgia Aquarium, Biltmore House. A lot of the attractions at St. Louis Zoo that are needed, they design those. We also have an architecture group that's based primarily in Kansas City, and they do what you might think of as traditional architecture.
Okay, that makes sense.
And when DREAM was being developed at the state level, we sent out an RFP and solicited responses from firms like them. So it was a competitive process, and they were selected among a group of responses, and then actually kind of helped us design how the program was gonna be implemented in the communities based on their experience in working with things like this. So they were instrumental in helping design the program, but were selected out of a stack of responses based on their level of expertise.
And now to get back while we're here. CID don't fly. You also have this NIB, you know, the
Neighborhood
neighborhood,
Improvement District,
and the CID, a lot of that area covered, I would wanna cover.
Okay.
If you're gonna develop NIB.
Okay.
More needy
What's that?
places.
More needy, okay,
Yeah, you know, the word, we have a lot of areas in town that does need a whole lot of work, but folks that can't afford.
Okay. Okay.
And you'll find me going always back to the money.
sure,
It's the financing. Is PGAV, you've already sent me a group of, and now these are for
Okay.
the museum. I think she can take advantage of it.
okay,
Well, our museum is owned by the museum bunch, it ain't owned by anybody else. Anyway, what is the basic difference besides not becoming a legal entity separate from the CID and the NIB?
Neighborhood Improvement District is something that's established by the county. And it can be set up by the county, and then it's additional property tax. So
Yeah,
it's-
I understand that, the
Yeah.
city can do it,
Yeah.
or the folks that live in these areas can form one themselves. They can put up a petition and have the city do it.
It operates under the same principles of the
Right.
additional
Right.
tax that would be
It's the same,
dedicated
yeah,
to that
it's-
area.
I didn't see any difference in the forming of it between this and the CID.
I think probably the main difference is what types of activities it can pay for. The CID is more flexible in how the funds can be spent
It's true.
and how it's formed.
Well,
Is an NIB allowed to do sales tax?
And,
No.
So-
because it would be more for a residential
As I recall,
area.
the reason we moved away from NIB, because we looked at all of these things, was because we didn't want to add property tax burden to these areas.
well,
What
the
we wanted
thing
to
of it
do,
is
if we're gonna add a tax, let's
Besides-
add it to the people who actually will directly benefit and have an economic motive to be able to repay that.
besides the property. Somewhere, I think I gave it to you, the undersized water lines and sewer lines in town.
Mhm.
And basically, they are all located in these areas I've been talking about. And we just can't find the money to, how much do you think it'd cost us? Bring all those, probably $5 million.
Okay.
To bring all our water and sewer lines up to par, what they're supposed to be. And
Do you have
there's
an
been some
engineering
houses
report on
that
that?
have actually burned to the
Do you
ground
have
because
an
of low water
engineering
pressure.
report on that?
So-
Have you submitted it for any kind of funding at all?
No, we've got the bond issue that is gonna
It's gonna
Help
be
with some of that.
provide.
We have 2.7 million
Yeah.
on that bond issue to directly deal with
Yeah,
that.
within
So the
infrastructure.
CID group, which is looking at the streets and sidewalks under which these
And
things
sewer can
run.
be involved in that too.
Right.
Well, we have to coordinate
So
it,
does
and so Bob and I have had numerous conversations on just exactly that. If the CID were to take place, we would want to absolutely time that, work that, so that the
All
2.7 million goes in. Now the 2.7 million doesn't have to replace that street, CID does that part, so your 2.7 million goes further.
That's just it. We want this tax increment financing I like.
Okay.
It
That's not
goes along with your CID and even the NIB on that. They both have the ability to use this tax increment fine. And that's that 23-year payback thing. If you can get the folks to go along with it, and they seem to be confident you can, I'm not.
Okay.
So
Well, texting.
I'm looking at low
very
interest
hard.
loans.
Okay.
Can
that
I,
you
can I ask a question? What is your preference for a TIF over a CID? Just so that
But I
I can
understand
understand
CID
it.
uses TIF.
No,
No.
Those are two different things.
Right.
Yeah, there are two different types of taxing districts that can overlay an area of your town. They operate just a little bit differently, so in order for me to help,
It's financing.
Well,
but it still
Fine.
establishes a specific area of your community.
Yeah.
And it would be limited to whatever area is designated for it.
Like Clarksville's was downtown.
And the reason I ask the question is I'm not trying to say that it helps me to educate other communities if I know why people prefer one to the other. So whenever we're having these conversations, if I can understand how they're viewing them and what makes them like one over the other, then it just helps with our education throughout. So that's why I was curious why a TIF was more appealing than a CID to you.
My interest is the whole town.
Okay.
Downtown, all over. And I don't want one financing force or system. I want us to be able to take all of them. You know, and the more, if one project costs more than this one financing form can pay for it, then can it be doubled up with another?
Yes.
A TIF and a CID can be used together, but then that would just be two levels
You-
of tax
you could
that you
even
can
have
impose on
multiple.
that area.
CADs, could you?
sure, yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I have
Thing
a
about
big
a TIF
question.
is, it has to be approved by the city, the county will have a little bit of
Much
It's a
say
little more
in it.
political.
It's much
The
harder thing to
school
get
has
that.
a say in it, the hospital has a say in it, and those entities, in my experience at being at PCBA, they don't like TIFs.
The CID is very
TIF
focused, very
Has a bad name throughout
Real
rural
quick.
Missouri because it's been misused in many instances. It's a great tool if used correctly, but we have a lot of education ahead of us in order to get communities to use it correctly.
Typically why people don't like it is because it was used for Walmart or some retail development.
Yes,
Which is,
Which was not the intent of the
Right.
program.
which has just been huge in the news again.
Right, but that's what gets all the press and.
Just
Yeah.
jump in, right?
I'm about
Yeah.
to,
Sorry.
because this might take care or help a lot of it. What exactly, you can read all you want online, you can read and read and read and still not completely understand what a TIF is and what a CID is. Can you please explain, tell us what it stands for, and then just the basic answer, you don't have to go into in depth. What are these initials, these acronyms, or whatever you wanna call it? What are these things?
You write the report, so I'll let you know.
TIF stands for Tax Increment Financing. It's a vehicle the state of Missouri allows you to use. What it does essentially is the city designates a specific geographic area, set the boundaries and say, okay, we have to make a determination whether or not that area qualifies for tax increment financing. If it does, then the county freezes the assessed value in that district at that level that year. Any increase in values over that frozen amount, taxes on that increased value, go into a special allocation fund managed by the city. And then those funds get spent within the district for certain improvements described in a redevelopment plan, which has to be developed prior to the TIF's implementation. The redevelopment plan describes whatever redevelopment projects the city wants to undertake within that area. Be it streetscape improvements, facade improvements, what have you.
Do all of these things that we could get, they need a comprehensive plan to move forward?
They don't need a comprehensive plan, they don't need to be part of they don't need to be part of the comprehensive plan, they need to comply with the comprehensive plan. Any TIF plan needs to agree with the city's comprehensive plan, otherwise it can't go forward. The other thing it does is it freezes sales tax revenue at the level the year prior to the TIF's implementation. So any increase in sales taxes, half of that increase goes to the TIF special allocation fund, half goes to the other taxing districts as they would normally. So you get any incremental sales taxes and property taxes for use within the district. A community improvement district, similarly, the city or a group of people designate a geographic area. They say, within this area, we want to do certain things that the city may not otherwise want to pay for, have the capacity to pay for. So they get together, put together a petition. They get signatures on the petition, at least 50%, or more than 50% of the property owners per capita, more than 50% of the property owners per assessed value. So you have to get two categories of ownership, get them all to sign the petition, submit that petition to the city has a public hearing, the city has an ordinance drafted to establish the community improvement district. that goes through at the city's end, then the CID is set up. After it's set up, the board of directors, whether they be elected or appointed by the city, can ask the qualified voters within the community improvement district if they'd like to impose an additional property tax or special assessment or sales tax within that area. The sales tax can be either a sales tax or a use tax. Either way, the sales tax doesn't apply to gasoline sales or the sales of communications equipment or cell phones or cell phone plans or anything like that. And sales tax as a property tax can be used within that district.
Or groceries.
Oh, well, you can specify if you don't want to apply to groceries, but so those monies can get used for whatever projects described in the petition. The budget needs to be submitted to the city on an annual basis, prior to the end of the city's fiscal year, so the city can opine if they want to on the CID's budget for the year, what they're going to spend their money on, so the city has a little oversight ongoing. It's essentially how the improvement district works. I think that the NIB we've been talking about as a neighborhood improvement district, which functions similarly to a CID, but doesn't give you the option to impose a sales tax, and any improvements paid for by a neighborhood improvement district have to be public improvements. But the community improvement district can pay for improvements to private property if the CID area is also designated as a blighted area by the city. So you could use CID money to pay for acquisition clearance or interior or facade improvements for the buildings in the area. I think it covers it. Is that
I think
any
so.
questions?
It's a ton of information.
Yes.
Well, I know there's a lot of people like myself that are just finding out about it. Well, I mean, I've been exposed to it, but it's been a while. But mainly, I'm trying to get a basis of what everything means, because if you don't know that stuff, then you're just hearing all these things coming at you, and none of it's making sense.
And these are big questions people are getting. Like, do you want an additional sales tax? Do you want an additional property tax? Or how do you feel about it? I mean, you start throwing around new taxes at people, they get nervous.
Well, and they don't know what to vote for either.
Sure.
If it's a citywide vote, you put these things on the ballot, and most people don't read about them. I mean, maybe half the people do, and the other half don't. And so if they don't truly know what it's about, then they're gonna probably vote no, or whatever. And so it's useless to even be talking about it if people don't know.
Education is key.
Education is key. And the fact of the matter is that I would anticipate that any tax or income financing vehicle would be adopted to be used for the achievement, implementation of these ideas. Right. So it's not like things are just coming out of thin air. Things have a purpose.
And they can be predefined.
Right.
And
Yes.
especially
Right, and
in the CID, we really want it, because nobody wants a tax. Nobody just said, oh, I'd like to be taxed more, yeah, that'd be great. What you want are the results of this. Are you willing to have this tax? It's a scale. Am I willing to pay this or have this happen so I can get that? So if we can really focus what that means, so that they're absolutely certain that this money isn't gonna suddenly go someplace else.
That's why it has to be a
Right.
separate entity
It's
from
a separate
everything else.
entity, it's dedicated funds, highly specified, we know exactly what we're gonna do with this thing. Then when we go out and say, is this something you wanna invest in? It's not, do you wanna pay more tax, because that's fun, nobody wants to do that. Is this worth paying for? This is what it's gonna cost you.
Right.
And it actually won't necessarily cost the Louisiana shoppers. It's a sales tax, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, but
We ran the numbers on
we
this.
purposefully included fifth gear in the CID, in the district itself, which means that the tax that fifth gear collects on behalf of their partners, we will have a portion of that tax in order to reinvest in that district.
Right.
Fifth gear
People outside
sells
of
to
town pay for
Oregon,
this.
Hawaii, I mean, no one from
Right.
Louisiana shops at fifth gear, right? So then
That
there's
was sale.
Where's context?
What about the
yeah,
wholesale?
nice garage sale, but this is money getting paid from people all over the world
Right.
that we're benefiting from. And given the fact that Louisiana has such a low city
China
tax,
too?
even China, so there's just a huge benefit. And all of those decisions were made, how to outline the district, what's the maximum effect, how it's all gonna be laid out. It's all been taken into consideration.
Countless hours spent.
Right.
Are there, reports or something that,
Let's see.
that you
I
can,
think the
I guess
CID
like
would
maybe
have-
what he has?
We had generating, let's see. At 1%,
Which was high.
it was high, we had at 1.6 million over 20 years. And that was at a 5% discount rate. I think so at 0.5% would be $800,000 over the time frame.
You know, I'm not opposed to a tax increase, whether it be sales tax or property tax, if we can get something like this in Louisiana. But I'm a real estate broker, and I know over the last 5 years, this town has become a rental town. And well, not the majority of the community, but a lot of the citizens who live here don't own the homes they live in. You've got a couple of different people that
On everything.
own everything.
Mhm.
And I would really like to see their taxes increased on their property because they're making money off those properties.
Let's see.
It's no different than me owning a business at 900 Georgia Street. My taxes are higher as a commercial property owner. It's no different. He's making money off of those properties. Those taxes need to come up.
And you see that in a lot of places where there's predominantly rental neighborhoods, or the property owners and landlords will get together and impose on themselves an additional property tax to fund improvements in the neighborhood or security or what have you.
So this doesn't just have to be, oh, we're gonna do it down Georgia Street, and they can actually go into, say, like Kramer Edition or something and make that a district if they wanted to.
Sure.
They can, and it could even be a separate CID. The reason we targeted Georgia Street and Third Street is because that's where the
Tourism.
visible, the highly visible, marketable aspect of our identity exists. It needs help, we need to fund it. And a sales tax, the slight sales tax, the half-cent sales tax increase is very reasonable to ask of those particular businesses. We think the demographic, like who owns what buildings, when you look at those numbers, the 50% valuation, those kinds of things, it's likely that we could, hopeful that we could get that done and accomplished. If you go into the Kramer district and say, do you want a half-cent property tax, that's not happening.
No, because they're already paying,
So-
you've got Dewey subdivision, Kramer subdivision.
I just
Those
was trying to get an
subdivisions
idea
pay
of
a
what
higher
you can do
tax.
other
You
things with it,
can.
not just these certain, their options are open
You
for other
can,
areas.
but the reason
Yeah.
we looked and wound up with what we wound up with was because we looked at the viability. of
Right,
this
for like
being
tourism and stuff like that, it needs to be up and right. Okay.
I'm gonna get back to you.
Okay.
I'm just waiting.
Sorry, I had to get some details figured out.
I'm not interested in CID, NIB, anything.
Okay.
But how you can help us with the finance.
That is how.
Yeah.
No, I wanna hear you.
Well, I mean, I don't have
PGAV
Any
does not
money.
doing. Getting that money.
I can loan you. I don't have, there's no special loan programs or anything associated with the initiative. I mean, part of the,
What I really wanna know, you've already sent me something.
Uh-huh.
Will you continue to alert us when
oh yeah, sure,
that's
grants and
what I
other
want to
opportunities,
know.
yes.
It's not just the grants, I'm talking about the 50/50s and the low interest loans and everything.
Mhm.
About everything, I don't care what it's about.
Oh yeah, anything that we find will,
See,
We'll
all
shoot
of
out
our
to-
problems is not just the businesses downtown.
Mhm.
Above, on the second floors, there used to be a whole community of people living there. Nobody living downtown anymore.
Historians.
Well, no,
Did you?
you know what?
Not in the last 10
Oh.
years, no.
There is a whole community that we don't have no more, second floor community.
sure.
There's stuff to
And
do that.
there is one in here already that I've seen about restoring historic property
Mhm.
inside. I want to restore the living quarters inside. As a matter of fact, he's got a headache right now on a building that we own.
If,
It started,
if you're interested in the historic tax credit program, I can get you a person, the name of a person and a phone number to call to hash out that program with him to determine if the types of activities that you're thinking about are eligible for that program. Now, keep in mind that
But not
program
just historic
is,
properties, man, I mean all of them.
well, the historic tax credit program would be specifically for a historic program. If you're looking at just housing in general, we also partner with the Missouri Housing Development Commission. But most of their funds have a targeted beneficiary, whether it be a senior citizen or a low-income individual. They don't just
Will you
provide
give me
funding
that
for,
person?
yes, we can get you contact. I've got your phone number back in my office, so I will get,
Well, give it to him, he got my email.
okay, well, we'll get an email to you.
We'll get you the contact.
Porter, I'm trying to understand your question. So, because I think we want the same things, we want Louisiana revitalized.
Yeah.
Is it that you want a one solution fits all?
No,
Because
I want to know everything that everybody can use.
I think
then
it's,
let me offer to you that there isn't a one size fits all, which probably you know.
Yeah.
The CID is possibly addresses a piece of it.
You've already worked that out.
The the HPC would be the place to go immediately to find out about historic tax credits. It's why we're a CLG largely. It's why we could fund the DREAM initiative, is because we're a CLG.
What's the CLG?
Certified local government, which allows us to have access to these
Yeah, we
kinds
got
of
that agency.
And what I'm saying is, I think it's gonna be a piecemeal together to achieve what you're saying, which is, I'm not just concerned about downtown, right, but that's one piece. So we can look at many different pieces.
I'm looking to help the fellow that owned the dilapidated house up on Nebraska Street. Or down on Delaware.
Wouldn't that be through grants? A lot of it
That's,
applies separately for things like that.
Or
folks,
economic
our town is
opportunity.
falling down around us. And simply because,
It's almost impossible to.
hey, our industry is always down.
Private.
From a
We need-
state perspective on our funding, it is hard for me to say absolutely, I have this one program that can come and fix all of your needs, because every program has a different purpose and is very specific in the goals that it has to meet and the types of benefits it can provide. So what I would encourage you to do, when you have this one project that is of the utmost concern, call with that one project and we'll see if there is funding to fit that need, and I can get you in contact with the individuals that manage those programs. But there's not just a dream pot of money that we can scatter out for various benefits. There were no extra dollars designated.
I don't want
for
anybody to get
communities.
any free money. No, I'm not that
And
at all.
there, to be,
I want to
that's
be-
good, because to be honest, there's very little free money left.
But here's the thing.
And it's only March.
If I moved out of Louisiana, it would raise the average age, and I'm 71. So I'm one of the youngest. The property owners, can we help them in any way? Do you have access to getting us they can't go to the bank and borrow money. They
Are you
don't have the equity
in the
anymore,
kneecap
the
area?
property's not
I was
worth
gonna
it.
say NECAC helps with that.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have, we're
Are
at
we
like
in what
$5,000.
In NECAC, I didn't know if you were in that
Yes.
Yes.
area. NECAC is an agency that can help senior citizens with certain,
Like they'll do
Oh.
$5,000 up.
I don't know
or
what their
something like
limits
that.
are anymore, but I know that it's a competitive process, I
You
think.
have to
I
meet
didn't know
certain
you had to do
criteria, certain.
I think they can do like some weatherproofing type activities and maybe some
Windows.
ADA accessibility issues and things like that. But for what you're talking about, there might be something
Well,
like
the
that.
SBA has these, what are they, seven A loans, I forget now which one, the biggest one they got. And there's all different kinds of 7A loans. But they are for businesses. Is there anything like that in existence through
For
HUD or
homeowners?
anyplace else? That for the individual up on Nebraska, down on Delaware?
That's again for certain types of renovations, and NECAC is the group in this area that applies for HERO funds. So that would be, I would say your
But
first
you
point of
think
contact
going to
is
NECAC,
NECAC,
I could probably find this information out.
because they are kind of a collective agency that gives communities in your area the access to those types of funds. Because a lot of times those types of funds, in order for them to see a benefit from it, they've got to be able to improve 20 homes at one time. Just coming to Louisiana and fixing one house doesn't provide a big enough impact for them. So what NECAC can do is apply collectively for a group of homes or a group of communities for funding to provide a bigger area or a bigger impact in northeast Missouri.
Well, we got the hero, what, 3 years ago, Mo?
As part of the dream.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, and being a dream community did give you a kind of some priority in that program, so. Do you know how many homes were assisted?
Not as many as we hoped.
Yeah,
There were a bunch of them rolled out.
because they were on the railroad.
But
They
I would
qualified for
argue
railroad.
that your house on Nebraska, the guy you wanna help with his dilapidated house on Nebraska that can't afford to fix it, that investment right there is one of the best things you could do for that guy with that house on Nebraska. That restoring Third Street and Georgia Street and generating business produces economic opportunity that will allow that man to have money in his pocket to buy new shelves for his store or to hang new windows in his house. And there is money available for this, if we go after it.
Yeah, I wanna go after it all. I want Louisiana to be exactly like it was when I left it in 1959.
It
It'll
can't
never be
it'll
that
never
way.
be that again.
Everything
Oh,
changes.
we did it always, I'll stay here for that. But, and I want a plan in place
Which is hopefully what this is gonna provide.
within the next year.
Yep.
Cause I told Bart last night, I'm gone.
Hey, I've told
When
him
this-
it has to be done within a year, so we're on the same page.
When this appointment's over, been at this for 42 years, and I'm going fishing, like I told Bart.
Sounds good.
We will get the plan done within the next year, and
Yep.
then it is up to everybody in this room and in your community to
But
make
we
it
don't
happen.
have to wait for that. I mean,
No.
we've got data now that we can be,
We've got
Using-
beautiful plans, in fact, I've got the other two.
Now, who paid for all of this to get, because
This is
that
all
go
Dream
through the
Initiative.
state?
Salt Dream
It-
Initiative.
It was through the Dream Initiative, the city paid 20% of the contract amount with PGAV, the state picked up the remaining 80%.
Okay,
And the state has, or the city has paid their portion in full, so we want you to make the best use of both their expense
how
and
much,
ours.
what kind of price range did this cost as far as
a little over
If you
40.
do something that,
40,000?
It was the
Was
city's
the
match.
city's part.
So,
we're the only
So-
town I know on the Mississippi
40,000?
River that has never used a river line.
I know,
so the state paid 4 times.
And we've got the best riverfront on the Mississippi.
huge opportunity to deal with the
We've
river.
got a lot of opportunity, we need to quit just sitting on it and move forward.
$200,000 investment is what the state and the city has made into this
Okay.
community.
And it would be a shame for us to pay $200,000
Walk
for
away
these
from it.
reports and have them say.
It's a
Yeah.
pretty
Right.
expensive doorstop.
Yeah.
so this started in 2008, this should have been, something should have already been,
Well, you were
Going with it.
designated, you received a designation in 2008, then it took some time to work out the contract, because we came and we did an initial assessment meeting to see how we can tailor the program to Louisiana, and not every community gets the exact same thing, so we came and we kind of evaluated Louisiana to see what your needs and desires were, then developed a scope of services, so it was into 2009 before we actually had a contract in place and could tell them to actually go get started.
Yeah, and then we went
So there
over
was a
the
bit of a
contract and kind of went back and forth with them.
And it's just taken a little bit longer because we've had changes in administration and staffing and
okay,
contacts and
that's
no
4
contacts,
years, so I'm
so
just curious as to, you know.
we're not gonna cut it off. It's paid for, they're on the hook to get it done, and so just because the clock, so to speak, it's not gonna run out at the end of a 3 or 4 year time frame. If you guys are committed and engaged, we will be here until it's finished. But if you're not committed and there is no engagement, we cannot do it for you.
Right.
I wanted to also bring that up because I've noticed, it's a different group of people every time you come, but this is not their first visit.
No.
In fact, they have
Yes.
given this exact speech to 6 or 8 other people who became interested at one point or another over the last 3 years, so.
Andy's a little bit newer.
I've been here from day
Andy's been
one.
here.
There's always a bit of excitement and we bring them in and they pitch it and then it
Well, I don't see this as being an excitement one time. I mean, if you have the opportunity to get all of these things and the money, I know it's not easy, but I don't see why anybody would be like, oh, let's do this, we're so excited, and then now it's 5 years later and nothing has happened.
Welcome to a committee. There's a committee that needs you somewhere.
Well, the
Okay.
CID, we
Oh,
kind of started running into bad weather and then the holidays, so we kind of just put a halt on it through the holidays and then.
And with the CID, you know, we've had communities that have moved too fast and skipped the education piece, and it has backfired on them.
Right.
And
I'll be blunt. Do you think that if we walked in here to the city council that we've had and proposed a CID, it would have a chance?
I think if people were educated and know, and actually there needs to be some kind of community liaison with the people, because there is no, I mean, explain what goes on. I don't wanna say these people because that sounds rude and it sounds like they're better or something, but I don't mean it like that. It's the everyday citizen, this stuff and this stuff that's going on now, they don't understand it. And I don't mean, only reason I'm, you know, kind of understanding and everything is because I've been trying to. But the people that are regular citizens, and
That's
that
what
sounds bad, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The average everyday citizen that's working and going about their business, they don't know and they don't have time to figure it out. They need somebody to kind
So
of
we have a big
streamline
public
it.
meeting.
It's a great thing what you're doing then, Ronnie, because you're putting it on YouTube, you're putting it on Facebook, you're getting it in front of people. And if that's the only way that they're going to feel included and be invited to the conversation, then that's how that's gonna happen.
Well, another thing, maybe this year at Color Fest, we could have something sitting down at the riverfront with
With all
all
of
of
these,
this information out there for the citizens to see and actually be able to look at that riverfront and
Get
have some
excited.
sort of vision, compare it to what these
Right.
boards show.
I think the Mayor's Office of Economic Development should do it. What do you think, Bob?
I'll
Ready to
help
man a
you.
booth?
Oh, not in a booth.
Me, myself, and I.
Well, we worked on that other one, got it approved, put it in the banks, both banks, matter of fact, we walked in, that's the first thing you see. And where's that one? And that's just what, 2 or 3, 4 years ago?
Seems like we need to stop the I's so much and do the we's. Because I think that's how it got dropped at some point. Because I, and
We got a town full of financially scared people. And it's all due to the nation's economy.
Sure.
And total
Let's,
extreme lack of jobs here.
let's,
And we deal
We
with
don't
that.
have, like I
We have
said, since I moved
39
out,
trained
it raises the age
and all of them
limit.
have the same,
We have 39.
same attitude, I think, when it comes to new
but I think
revenues
that
and
goes
taxes and
back
stuff.
to education. If people don't know, they're
Yeah.
not gonna do anything about it.
Right.
Well, on your job creation, we've got to import labor. We don't have a labor force here at all. I mean, you know,
You have to give them a reason to come here,
Just-
though, to be a
to
labor
sustain
force.
any
Good labor force.
incoming industry or anything. We don't have a labor force.
We have a really weak middle class.
That's what we need.
We have to.
And we've got to attract them here, we can't attract them here without jobs.
That's right,
And
but we do
so-
have to recognize what our assets are. I mean,
Yeah.
we have
Well,
low
we got-
property values, we
we've
have
got the
central
railroad,
location.
we've got the river, we've got the highway, and the highway's gonna get better. We got dreams
Low property price,
Uh,
you can get into.
and well thought out. But we've got to get out there.
Are you
on
advocating
Nebraska.
for a citywide plan?
Are
you advocating for a citywide plan and vision?
Abstract. Yeah,
I love it.
yes,
I can't wait to go fishing with you.
I think there's just been a lot of
Yes.
miscommunication, no education. And that's a lot of the problem why things don't happen.
Are you a business owner?
Not right now.
I'm just curious.
A lot of people think the city is 203 South Carolina, and it's not.
You mean two or two?
This building can go to hell, as far as I'm concerned. It's that fellow up on Nebraska that I'm worried about. Because he has no choice of what happens down here. And he has no say in it, really.
He's got a choice on the second.
Huh?
He's got a choice on April
Yeah.
2nd.
That's right. And he's got a choice that gets up here on his hind legs and refuses to be shouted down. And I'm gonna quit because I start to get mad, you know? And I don't like it. I've been mad too long in my life. I don't wanna be mad anymore. And I want folks like you come in here and take us all by the hand and say,
Local politics
this is how you
aside,
can do it calmly and get something done.
The week before election.
I know, it's, but you know, all of that aside, our
we-
goal was to provide a well-developed, well-thought-out plan that could be left with whoever in the city of Louisiana to move forward with.
Like I
See
say, I
success.
just got your books this morning. And you still have, what, 2 or 3 to go?
And all completed reports are
But
on,
the one I'm interested in, the one I'm gonna read first is that finance.
is the finance, yeah, that's a good one. All completed reports are on bodream.org. And that's available to
And they have to-
anybody, you know, there's no passcode or anything to get there. Everybody has access to that website. Every dream community is on that website, so if you're curious about what's been recommended in another community, you can go look there. Everything's there.
Did we achieve what you wanted from this meeting, to be updated by what our dream is and what it is?
Yeah,
All right,
I
awesome.
mean, not completely, I still got a million questions, but I gotta go do some reading for it and ask them.
That's what email is for.
Okay.
I do appreciate you coming, I really honestly
Well,
do.
thank you for having us. We are happy to, you know, happy to be here. We just need a group that stays engaged in order to be able to complete the process.
Man, we sold the city for $8 million. We can sell them for a few thousand more. If that's what it's gonna take.
But with that, just like we said, DREAM is not strictly that CID. That is one recommendation
That's a
of the
tool
entire,
in DREAM,
yes,
right?
it's a tool that we have presented to you to help you further your goals for the DREAM initiative.
Right.
But that is, DREAM does not depend on, and is not solely focused on the CID. DREAM is much bigger than just that. So I don't want DREAM to die because there are
No,
people that are
I don't want
opposed
none
to
of
the
that,
CID.
I want everything. If we can't cover the whole town with this CID, then can the rest of it be covered by NID?
Well, I don't know. You can also, you can do a local option economic development sales tax.
No, it's just something you work on next time we talk.
DREAM had to have a focus, we had to establish boundaries in order for them to have a study area, because they don't, it would have cost us $400,000 if they had to evaluate every building in the city. So we had to have a focused area.
How often are you guys willing to come here?
Well, I'm sure a lot of my questions will be answered when I'm
Yes, I think it will be, there's great information in those reports.
So would you guys like to come once every month or once every 2 months or something like
For a
that?
while.
If it's
Well, it
beneficial,
was, yeah.
if it's beneficial.
I think that would help, you know, I would come and I'm sure Sarah
I
and you
think-
guys would be here, so,
We are planning to come back and give a more formal presentation,
okay.
as to kind of the recommendations that have come out of the reports that he's completed so far, and what the next steps are, and what it is gonna take locally to complete the
And that would be
process.
planned out far in
Yes, that will
advance,
be
versus a few
Done
days.
properly, right?
Yes.
I mean, we don't have any control, but yes, that's the intention.
So is there anything you need from us?
I don't think so at this point.
You will let us know exactly when we do need to do something for you.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I guess we need to schedule our next meeting up here, maybe the next, or an upcoming city council meeting, if you want to put us on the agenda. You can come up then.
That'll be
That's fine.
the,
April 11th, but
Do we need to
Nine.
wait?
no, no,
Yeah, well,
No,
that's the,
it's gonna be-
or no, it's.
Eight.
Eight. Yeah,
be date.
Okay, I think we can do that.
that's real quick here, it's a week.
It is a week, isn't it?
That's installation of new officers.
Yeah,
Oh.
there's a lot on that agenda.
Should we wait till the one
No,
after
put it
that?
back in May.
And
Yeah,
would be
that
my
will give the new council members a time to get,
that way you've got
yeah,
time for them to get acclimated.
All right,
second Monday in May.
second Monday,
Cover
That'd be
it.
fine.
No, it's fine.
that's the
May 13th.
13th.
I was keeping these in my office.
Yeah.
We're up here if anybody wanted.
Yeah, I have more trouble like right here now.
40 in my
You
house.
can keep them here if you'd like, if they'd be of more use here, they don't.
By the way,
fancy you around my office. That's fine.
I'm
I just
not-
don't want it to get
on the
destroyed.
committee,
Okay,
I'm just an interested citizen.
Alright.
But,
well, I appreciate your questions.
I've been interested in this old town a long time. I don't wanna see it go to hell from inattention. People have gotta pay attention. especially
One
now.
tough obstacle though
You know,
is
before we had money,
some of the
before we
older
could get
people
money,
of this community.
those days are
They
gone.
don't wanna see change, they've made their money, they're perfectly content with what we have, and so enticing them.
Did you know that when you actually look at the census data,
Thank you very much. I appreciate
we envision ourselves as this older retirement community, and we are slightly,
50.
but nothing like we envision
No,
ourselves.
just
What we
just-
what we have is a problem with who's engaged. We're not engaging our young professional youth at all. So what we're left with, the only people that are active are that older.
I just don't wanna run up against what we get on the plate for the vote when they come.
Right.
You know, we got
The
people,
demographic,
you know,
Likewise.
I mean to encourage you, the demographic you're looking for is here. We need to find a way to engage.
Yeah, and a lot of them are,
Yeah,
like myself right now, I'm not working right now.
Bob?
But there's a lot of people that aren't, so they're on a low economic, but they can be raised up.
Hi, Porter. Good to see ya.
When you
But
bring
we also
business
gonna
in,
We're gonna have to import a certain demographic of the middle class to get this pump moving. Because right now you got this lower economic
A lot
cog
of
that's
them
sitting
are
here,
so
and upper
busy.
economic cog, and they don't touch.
no, and a lot of the middle class, though, they're so busy doing, you know,
The
the
few
job,
that
the kids, all of that, and they don't have, a lot of times, they don't have the time
Exactly right.
to be able to, I mean, to be involved.
Well, yeah, I was gonna do the,
Where's your
like, you know, between the kids and the shop.
It's a lot. My
It is,
business
but
is
I'm gonna
taking
be
a huge hit.
one less
I don't see how you're involved in like 10 different clubs.
I pay a significant price to be involved. But it's gotta get done. We've gotta find a way to do it. One of my main interests in starting Interact at the high school was
I wanted
to
to talk to you about that,
invest
I
in
wanna,
that youth involvement.
I wanna learn about that.
They don't slaughter there. It has to get on a boat and come from
We
here.
can go lunch.
Leave those to Bob.
People at City Hall.
Yeah,
Mine was like
it's-
3.
That's who it's Kevin.
When he calls them, I will follow up.
See ya.
Ronnie, thank you.
No, thank you.
Ready?